The United States top infectious disease expert has said that he believes a return to universal lockdown is not necessary. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr Anthony Fauci, said that instead of a universal lockdown, cities and states could alter restrictions according to the severity of the outbreak.
We know from countries that have done it and from when we have done it right in certain regions, states, cities in our own country, that if you adhere strictly to the use of masks, social distancing, or physical distancing is a better word, avoiding crowds, shutting the bars in areas where there's activity of virus, we can turn it around. There are states that have prematurely opened. There are those that have opened correctly. People in the state or the city don't pay attention to what the guidelines are. It's time to cause what I say a pause, time out, and if you have gone to a step further than you should, back up a bit. I don't believe we universally have to go back to a complete lockdown. I don't think it's necessary from a public health standpoint at this time. At this time, I think we can turn it around, but the fundamental, and I just refer to them as the 4 or 5 fundamentals, if we do that universally and uniformly, Steve, we can turn this around.
Peter Chowka is a journalist and political analyst in the United States. Peter, good evening.
Hello, Stephen. Nice to be with you this morning.
It's nice to be with you too. I've been watching Dr Fauci over many months now. He's actually become a star in this pandemic in his own right. Just remind those people who maybe aren't as interested as I might be in American television as to who Dr Fauci is and the history of his relationship with President Trump.
Yes, well, Dr Fauci has worked his entire life, 5 decades, in high positions in the U.S. government's National Institutes of Health. He is, in addition to a scientist, he is a political animal. He's had a high profile in the media for decades. In fact, he ran the U.S. government's HIV/AIDS program, the war on AIDS, starting in the 1980s, and they talk about controversy. And he has survived every Republican and Democrat administration since then. He gets along with left, right, and center, although as the head of the White House coronavirus task force since earlier this year, he has run into some controversy because of conflicting evidence and advice he has given since the onset of this pandemic.
Well, what conflicting advice has he given?
Well, for example, in early March and through the month of March, he was saying vociferously, do not wear a mask. There is no benefit in this pandemic to wearing a mask. In April, he did a 180-degree flip and suddenly said, you have to wear a mask. Now, he now explains that by saying that he was cautioning people to not wear masks because he wanted to maintain the supply of masks, which was limited at the time for medical professionals. But he's also been, to some extent, all over the map on some other issues, although, of course, that can be understood because we are learning a lot about this pandemic as we go on, so he can't be totally faulted for that, but he does have his critics now. I would say he was at his highest point of popularity in March and April, and less so today.
What's his relationship like with President Trump?
Well, it's been pretty good up until about a month or two ago when he stopped appearing in public with President Trump, and there were various reports in the media that they had a falling out. But just yesterday, Friday, Dr. Fauci gave 2 or 3 high-profile interviews and a major speech, and I think he's trying to come around to President Trump's side now. He basically said his relationship with President Trump is good, and that's a direct quote. He agreed with what President Trump has done with canceling the convention night in Jacksonville, Florida next month. And he also says now that it's not necessary, he does not think it's necessary to do a second shutdown of the country. And that is also in very close alignment to what President Trump and his administration have been proposing in recent weeks, because as they're trying to reopen the country and get the economy and the schools back open again.
Where are things? Where are the worst states affected in the U.S., Peter, at the moment?
At the moment, California, some of the southern states like Florida, this is where the pandemic is peaking now, and it's doing less harm in the original states that were badly hit, like New York, for example. But it has not run its course yet. But, there's a lot of scientific disagreement, Stephen, in this country. When you talk to credentialed scientists in academia and elsewhere who are outside of the government, they point to really a very different viewpoint than what is coming out of some of the states and the federal government, saying reopening is not that dangerous. The mask is not that important. In fact, there's actually no scientific studies that I'm aware of that can confirm that wearing a mask has much of a positive role in this. So, the jury is still out, as we say, and hopefully when we get forward in this, we'll be able to make some sense out of it. But right now, it's very confusing. And plus, one final thought here. Ideology comes into play. We have an election coming up in 3 months. Everything is seen through a political and ideological prism in the United States, including the government's reaction, President Trump's reaction, and the governors of the states' reaction to this pandemic.
Peter, thank you very much. Peter Chowka, journalist and political analyst in the United States.